Okay, good afternoon, everyone. How are you? Good. Good, all right. We're all excited you ate lunch and you're past afternoon nap time. Otherwise, we'll get you there real fast. But there is water and cookies in the back if you need that little bit of sugar. My name is Nancy Boxey. I am the Executive Director for the Lapeer County Community Foundation, and I'll let my partner introduce herself.
I'm Dawn Labonte with United Way, and I confess when I saw you, Bill, after the presentation at Kiwanis, fear struck my heart, but I'm going to trust you not to bring up old memories in this presentation today. I'm going to behave today, Bill. We're going to behave, okay. Well, no, we're not, but anyway.
We might not. Just a few housekeeping things. If you can put your phones on silent, I'd appreciate it. I want to say thank you to the Lapeer County ISD and the Ed Tech Center for letting us use the space. I recognize we were a little crammed in when we got in here and just didn't have time to move tables. If you need to use the restrooms, they're out in the hallway to the left, so help yourself to that. Anytime you need to get up and move around and help yourself to snacks. We have 2 hours, a little less than 2 hours. We probably have 2 weeks worth of material. So we're going to go through some of this quickly. You have all the slides. Our goal is, I looked at your registrations, and about half of you have written grants, and half of you haven't written grants. Half of you have been successful, and half of you haven't. And about half of your organizations rely on grants to fund your operations and the program delivery that you give. So we're kind of a mixed bag of experience. And so we're going to try and ride that line between I've never done this before and, so far beneath us, we're far advanced. I'm a kind of presenter. If you have something to add, please raise your hand. If it doesn't make sense, I think Dawn is too. If you have something to add that, yep, I've had this experience and you want to share it, it's good for the whole group because that's part of it. I leave these learning from other people that have written grants. Dawn is exceptionally skilled as a grant maker.
So much stress.
And so I'm going to learn from her. And I know even Michelle's here, and her organization is a grantor. So some of you are in that position as well, that you have funding that you give out. So we're all in the room to learn together. Hopefully we impart a little bit of knowledge to you. Anything to add to the intro?
Nope.
Nope. So some of you, like I said, are newbies. Some of you have done this. But those of you that have written grants, it gets easier. You can say every time you write one, it gets easier because we all learn, right? It's just that learned experience. And some of that is just the preparedness that goes into it. And so what we're going to try and do is demystify the process so it's not so scary because as several of you have said, this wasn't supposed to be your gig. It just kind of fell on your lap, especially as a small nonprofit when there's 1 or 2 people. You just kind of all jump in and share the wealth and learn as you go. So again, we're meant to demystify it and hopefully give you some skills to get started or help you become successful along the way. So when you get started, I'm going to jump right in so we are going to do some small table group. That's why we made you sit together, just to make friends and also to do some grant review amongst yourselves. But it usually starts with a need. Right? You want to fund something, or you see a funding opportunity. So we all get things through our emails of, apply for a grant, or these opportunities are out there, and you think, how do I get started? I am biased because I am the local community foundation, and I always say we are the low-hanging fruit. So, if your first grant you're going to write is going to be to the federal government, that is a little bit more intimidating than your local community foundation. And those of you that have written those governmental grants or state grants recognize that there's a lot more reporting and documents that are attached to it. So, I always say start with your local funders or having those conversations like we're having today to help build some of your confidence. But oftentimes, what'll happen is you'll get what's called an RFP, or you'll see a request for proposals. And that basically is the word that goes out. It's either in an email you get, or if you're researching online for different organizations, or you're typing in the Google search, Who funds homeless shelters? Things come up and you might see an RFP, which is a request for proposals. That is just saying we're asking you to apply, or there's an opportunity out there. And so I always start by saying, and we'll get to I should have switched these slides around because the next slide is what you should be doing before the RFP. But this is just to say, let's do some research. Let's take the time to stop and really read what is it that they want. What kind of proposal are they looking for? Is there a deadline for it? When do you need to apply? Deadlines are deadlines, and we'll talk about that throughout this session. They're not meant to just be evil things for you, but it is allowing funders to have their review committee. It's allowing funds to get expended when they need to be expended, and they're hard stops. Unless a funder says we've extended the deadline, calling up and saying, my dog had a crisis yesterday, is not going to change the deadline of the grant. So take a look at when you see these or you see that opportunity online, start by researching the organization that is putting out the request. Learn about them. If it's the Community Foundation, go on our website, see the types of things we funded. Find out some history of us, and that is going to give you a lot of idea of, are you even a good match? If it says that they're specific to a geographic area, like we're only going to fund transportation projects in Tennessee, Kelly is not going to apply for GLTA because it's not for Michigan. So you can do a lot of research about the agency and having some of that knowledge before you even start writing. Because it is going to become apparent in your application that you haven't done that type of work. Mark up. When I get any kind of a request, I just finished a grant application proposal on Monday. And when it first got the application, what I do is I print it out because I'm old school. You might do it online. I have an actual old-fashioned highlighter.
Me
and
too.
You too. I do it. A lot of this audience looks like they're in our boat. But I highlight it. I circle, like, when's the deadline? I'm marking up the information that they want. I have the documents outlined that they want, and I really spend time making sure what are my buckets so I can be prepared to respond to those. Jot any of the ideas you have in the margin. If you think, oh, this particular part of our program or something else might fit, make all those notes so you have something to go back to. I have yet to have a grant application where I start at A and I just chunk it through to Z before I submit it. It's usually this jumbled mess of, I can do M because I actually have that right now, but I need to get more information on B. So, organize your thoughts and organize your documents and find out, because there's going to be parts of information in there that you might not have that information on. If you're a larger organization, you might need to talk to your finance director to get budget information. You might need to talk to another committee member that has other information that you're going to need to get from them. If it's letters of support from the community, that's all part of that timeline so that you're not chunking through A to Z, and actually Z was you need to have 5 letters of support. Well, today's the deadline and you just got to it. So just to construct all the elements of that request for proposal, and then you can have a time to ask questions. Some funders will have information sessions online where they know they're going to have a proposal, and they'll say, they're going to do a webinar a couple months ahead of time, and you're invited to participate in it, because then you're really going to get that information about their organization and the types of things they want to fund. But more importantly, you can usually make a connection then to an individual. They'll say, if you have any questions, contact this person, or here's an email. That's your best friend. Am I missing anything there?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. This is the first time we're doing this together. So, but before you even get there, I talk about organize your organization documents. You can do that today. Any of this information up here, you should be starting to get together before that first application ever gets going. Because every application is going to need some of these, if not all of these. And having it organized in your organization is kind of critical. your agency history, the number of employees, your mission, your vision and values. Seems pretty basic until you get a little box that says, tell us what your organization does in 1,500 characters. Those are the kinds of things that you can have put together right now succinctly, so when these types of opportunities come up, you have them in place. Financial information. Does your organization have a budget? Sometimes small nonprofits don't even have an organization budget. Do you have your financial statements? If you're an organization that does an audit, do you have your most recent audit? Do you have a project or a program budget? Where do you get your sources of funding? The application that I just applied for wanted to know our top 4 funders for our organization in our past year and the amount. And they also want to know the top 4 funders for the program that I'm applying for and the amount. So having that kind of readily information together. Your governance, this is a piece that, do you have your IRS determination letter if you're a 501c3? You are going to have to attach that. Schools don't have to by nature, governmental entities don't have to, but if you are the refuge, every funder is going to ask for your IRS determination letter to prove that you're a 501c3. You might need your, who's governing your board, a list of your board members. If you don't have that handy, have that together. If you have a strategic plan, your articles of incorporation, I've not had to submit those, but I know some have required it. Staff bio, who's going to run your program or that's managing your project. So I'm not going to go through all of this. The DUNS number, that's important for federal applications, state applications, and you can take a look at this. But having files, whether on your computer or somewhere, to find these documents and get them organized are always important. Other documents that are good is letters of, when we look at like letters of support, you're going to have letters of support for your project typically that you're applying for, but you may have general letters of support for your organization and the work that you do. It's always good to have some of those on file that you can pull out. Keep this up to date. If you've changed things in your organization, make sure it gets changed in your file and make sure it's accessible to everyone on your team for when they write these. Any questions about any of that kind of nuts and bolts? That's kind of standard things that they're going to look for. And for small organizations, it's not always simple to have that, especially if you're just starting out. All right, I'm turning it over to Dawn.
The great thing is you've got the presentation. So all of those little teeny weeny check boxes are right there for you. So, I was remiss when I started. I didn't tell you what the heck I'm doing here. I've only been with United Way since January, but for the 26 years prior, I was a corporate funder for Wells Fargo. So I have funded over 10,000 grants in my career and have hosted over 1,000 volunteer opportunities. So I've got some experience on the other side of the house. So then I come to this side of the table as United, I'm like, oh dang, this stuff's really hard. This is like karma for all of the things that I've put people through, because I would have, can you give me those 2,000 pieces of documentation? So I'm like, wow, this is a total karmic payback being on the other side. So I have empathy as we all move through this space together. And then I can come to you from the side of being a funder as well. So that's why Nancy invited me, because I can talk to you about some of the pitfalls from being a funder for so many years. And you'd think that would help me? Not really. So SMART goals and objectives, I think that, yeah, I was making sure. So I don't want to be remedial. Do we all know, have we all seen SMART goals and objectives? I think the biggest thing that a funder is going to look at, especially if you're starting out or you're a smaller nonprofit, is does your agency have those skills? And if you don't, do you have somebody that's going to execute? So somebody that's going to do whatever you're applying for the money for and make sure that you've got their resume and make sure that you're ready to talk about the people that are going to support your initiative, even if they're volunteers. So for us, we have over 20 IRS certified volunteers. I certainly would not do your tax return, I promise. So that's what I talk about. I talk about who we've brought to the table that have those skills when I apply for grant dollars. So think about that. The rest of it, SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable. Relevant is really important. Does it align with what you're asking for? And you're going to hear me say this more than once. What I see all the time is mission creep. Are you creeping off your core mission? Or are you chasing? We also call it chasing the dollar. They go look at our strategic priorities, like, well, if I tweak what I do a little bit, I can apply for that grant. We see right through it. So stay with what you're good at, and then what you want to do is build relationships with people that fund those things. So that's the bit of advice I had to give to you there. A lot of this Nancy already covered as well. And then the ER, how many of you know what key performance indicators are? To me, that's like it's a newer term, key performance indicators. So it's about evaluating your work. What are you measuring and how are you measuring it? How many people are you going to serve? How are you addressing their needs? How are you going to move the needle on an issue? And more importantly, here comes the hard part, how are you going to measure it? So if you're going to go out and use census tract data, or you're going to go use something out there in the world already, how are you going to prove that you've moved that needle? So you've got to be able to tell that story, because they're going to want a final report. They're going to want to check in and see how you're doing, especially because that year's going to go by really fast. You're going to go, dang, it's time to apply again, and I don't have a story. So you want to really make sure that you know exactly what you're measuring and exactly what you're going to talk about right out of the gate, and how often you'll check your progress really fast on the year, guys. So if you are new in this funding space, really take that time to think about how you're going to measure what you're talking about. And I did run an animal sanctuary for 20 years, so I've got a lot of experience with that. And I call that the heart agencies, right? To me, it's a little, you can find out people that fund animals a little bit easier, and you can tell your story because, you got the awe factor. So for those of you that don't have the heart agencies, that makes your job a little bit harder, right? A little bit harder. So then you've got to really rely more on the metrics. The other thing is, and Nancy touched on this, is this funder a fit? And I will continue to discuss this ad nauseum, because there's two things. Is it doesn't match the strategic priorities of the organization. So I'm going to use the what my low-hanging fruit is banking. We have the Community Reinvestment Act that we must comply with. Boom! If you do anything that you know fills what's called the CRA Act, Community Reinvestment Act, you're going to want to apply to a bank. So you want to make sure that it fits the strategic priorities, that it fits the funding cycles. Like a lot of agencies, and Wells Fargo, they fund different programs during different times of the year. So get out there, get familiar, and get it on your calendars, because you're going to want to be ready. But that doesn't mean you can't start building that relationship with your funder. So that's the biggest thing, is are you fitting with the funder? And the next thing I'm going to mention is the size of the funder. So back when I was doing the coaching for folks, because they'd get me on the phone and I would say, you know what? Getting through the door here is going to be a challenge because you don't fit. Let's talk about it for a little while. And what inevitably I found is small funders right in their circle of influence, right in their neighborhood, right in their community, that gave away the funds that would at least get them off the ground and up and running. So I task you with that. If you're new, if you're starting up, who's in your immediate sphere of influence, who's in your immediate community, that you can go out and look on people's websites, look at who's running ads. I'm going to say, like, small businesses will tend to give those small dollars without it being this big formal grant thing, right? So if you're just starting out, that's a really good space for you to start and say, okay, I'm going to go seek 500 here, 500 here, and at least keep the lights on while I'm starting to build my bench strength. So is the funder a fit, and do I have to start? Like, if Wells Fargo is a fit, great, but could we start with a local bank? Could we start with a credit union that might not do the big, huge, giant funding, but they might be a little bit more community-minded, local-minded? So there's things like that to consider as well.
The one thing I'll add to that too, and whether the funders have fit, and I alluded it to the beginning also, in your research of funders, it's really important to know how much are they granting. You know, we see that all the time. You know, I'll get a grant application, you'll see one that you guys are going to review a little bit later, and their ask was $130,000 for their project. Our total grant making of unrestricted funds every year is $170,000. So we have other scholarship funds and things that make that amount go up, but you would know really quickly if you looked at our annual report that you're not going to get $130,000. So it's not the right fit for a project of that scale.
Or you ask for a part of the project.
Yes, for a part of the
like,
project.
I would like the whole
Yep,
project.
exactly.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that's why Nancy and I, we realized as we started to share lunch once a month that we are very like-minded and we complement one another. So that's why she invited me to join her today. So a case for giving, as you can see, look at the kitty, right, the heart. So your application needs to build a case for giving. Why would a funder, because keep in mind we're reading, a lot of us, you know, they're funders, not me anymore, I'm retired from that, read a lot of grant requests, especially those of you going for state or federal funding, Kelly. Just saying, you know. They're going to be reading so many. And so why you? So you got to get them, boom, right out of the gate. You got to make sure that what is compelling about your story, what is compelling about this community that would make a funder that is dealing with a large geography go, you know what? I want to give the money to Lapeer County. I want to give the money to this agency. So think about that. And you can always, you know, talk to us or talk to, as you talk to your peers. Sometimes there's things that are right in front of me that I don't even realize because I'm too close to it. So make sure you talk to other folks about that and just talk about why do you think we need to be here? And it's part of my presentation that Bill heard when I first got here. I went around saying, do we need to be here? And I went and met with Nancy. That's where we met. I said, do we need to be here, Nancy? Because it's really important to hear it through the lens of somebody else versus what we're just sitting there thinking or that's keeping us up at night. And why do you need a grant versus, because this is what the big funders are going to look at too, or Nancy as well, and I don't mean you're a small funder, I'm sorry. Compared to me, you're huge. We were talking about, I'm like the little dragonfly in the pond that looks like a cricket, and she's like the big koi. So you know that dragonflies look like crickets, right? Anyway, where was I? Oh my God, see, that's the problem.
Why do you need a grant?
What?
Why do you need a grant?
Why do you need a grant? Yeah. So are there other agencies doing the same thing? And if they are, why are you different? Is it your demographics? Is it that, you know, you do endangered snails and you do elephants? What is it? So that's the part of the story that you have to tell is what makes you different than other people doing it, what niche you're going to fill. And then it can also be, you know, demography, right? I'm the only person doing this in these many square miles. So, and don't make any assumptions. Assume that the people that are on the funding board are not from your community, don't know you, don't know your agency, and don't know what you do. So you're pretty much, assume that you're just a tabula rasa to them and tell them the information in a very succinct fashion.
And I'm going to piggyback on that because I think sometimes when you think of that, you think of the big funder. From our own community foundation, because we review hundreds of grants a year as well, people make assumptions that we know you because you're in Lapeer County, right? We make assumptions that, you know, Shanna's going to put a grant application in and she knows who Skyline is and we funded them before, but my committee might have changed and they don't know. Skyline might have changed what they're doing out at, you know, I can't begin to understand everything that they do out at camp. And so sometimes I think familiarity makes you err on the side of, well, I'm not going to say that because they know us, right? They know what we do. And so don't find yourself in that end as well, because then it almost can, to a funder, can feel like you're just making assumptions they're going to get it, right? There's this personal connection. So there's a balance to make sure you have relationships, but don't let that impact your statement, because we do see that all the time as well.
Back to you.
Oh, is it back to me?
It's back to you.
All right. I dump stuff in all the time. I'll probably drive Dawn crazy. As we walk through this, even some of the things that Dawn talked about, what I always want to talk to people about is nonprofits. Oftentimes I see get in a trap that we think we're nonprofits, but you are also a business. And sometimes it feels like people are viewing that as mutually exclusive, right? Because you are doing heart work, right? You're housing the homeless, and you're feeding the hungry, and you're helping women in need, and all those types of things, but you are also a business. And a funder is going to look at that, because it's not all just compassion, it's dollars and cents, because we have limited charitable dollars, and we want to make sure that they're going to organizations that have the ability to get it done, that can manage the funds,
Bless you.
And do what they say they're going to do. And if you just say, we're the animal rescue, we do want to know, are you aware of your competition? Because the growth of nonprofits is the highest growth in, if you want to call it, businesses in America. There's more nonprofits being built every day than there is actual for-profit businesses. So if you're not aware of your own ecosystem and understanding it, a funder is aware of it. So make sure that that comes through in your proposal. Parts of a grant. Project summary. That is your basic, what are we going to do? Tell us what it is about your project without it being 27 pages long. This is not a thesis. And if anything, give yourself a, character limit and see how I love to write. Jennifer will tell me, Nancy, you need to cut this by 3 paragraphs. But give me enough information that I have a clear understanding of what your project summary is. What is it you're going to do? Not that we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and maybe we'll do this, and last week we had lunch on Tuesday. So that is really letting us know the crux of what you are getting funded. What is your need? You have to demonstrate that there is a need for what it is you want. Demographics, finances, achievement, engagement, lack of services, however it is, that's the need that drove you to think that this project is important. Even if it's just computers for your organization, we need software for our organization. That's a need, right? We have to manage our clients. And so we need new software, we need new computers. You're going to someone for charitable dollars, we're going to want to know, what have you been doing? How is it sustainable? We know technology, 3 years from now it's going to be obsolete. Are you going to come back to us then for more computers? Or what is your plan long term so that we're not refunding the same thing all the time? What are your activities, your goals and objectives, and your timeline? When are you going to buy it? When are you going to launch it? How long is it going to take? Who's going to manage it? This is an important part. If you're taking on a project, something for the school, and it's a whole new initiative, do you have staff assigned to it? Are you going to have to hire staff for it? Are the people that are doing it qualified for it? It's not if we get it, then we'll sort it out later. Evaluation plan, Dawn already talked about it. How are you going to know your success? What's your sustainability? That is a big piece that we look at as funding. Is this a one and done? We tend to like to start initiatives that might not have started, but then we want to see this is going to be carried through. So, I'm going to start this whole new summer camp for kids with special needs, and we're going to do all these types of things this year. Okay, how are you going to do that next year? Or if it's only a one-year project, tell us why it's COVID. And so we did a lot of that during COVID, especially camperships, like they couldn't come to camp, so they were sending boxes home so it'd be camp at home. That's an understandable type of thing. Budget, we will get to budget more because budget is probably one of the top areas that we see people struggle on their applications. Required documents, we already talked about that. And then letters of partnership and letters of support. Those are very valuable. That is people in the community, whether it be other organizations, whether it be families, whether it be your people you've served. that tells us that you're not just out throwing darts at a dartboard and no one else is behind your team saying this is a good idea. It's not Nancy Boxey sitting in bed at night going, this is great, the whole world needs this. There's actual people that agree with that. And so those are very valuable. Don't submit 32 of them. No funder wants to read 32 of them. Pick some good quality ones. I don't know, maybe Wells Fargo wanted 32 of them.
I love 32. So I'm going to tag into sustainability, if I may. The other thing that I look for, and I know a lot of you in the room already have this with sustainability, but I read a post the other day on Facebook, and I started just typing, I'm like, get in your lane. It was somebody calling out Goodwill and saying, we give you our stuff, and you're selling it. Why would you do that? And so I'm like, let me tell you why. And I'm like, wait, I'm not Goodwill. I don't work for Goodwill. Stop it. So let me tell you why. It's because they're going to sell those goods. They are paying for the cost of doing business. They're training a workforce. They're workers. They're training people how to use a cash register. They're training people who have not been successful in the workforce to get up in the morning, put on an appropriate outfit. That sounds silly, but I rescued teenagers from couch surfing, and they did not know to put on clean clothes. So it's like basic life skills. And so the more that that Goodwill can raise that money, they do job training, they do job placement. So I'm like, Goodwill, tell your story. So that's what I'm saying to you. If you have something in your platform where you are raising funds, or if you're selling that Save the Endangered Snail t-shirt or something, that is you building in some income into your budget, and that also looks good to a funder that says, hey, you know what, if I give them $10, and they raise $5, they only need $5 more. So that's something as well. If you've got something that's just right there in front of you, and I'm sure, Bill, you do as well, if you have something where you do charge a small fee, and GLTA is perfect, right? $1.50, what's not great about that? So that's a little tiny bit of dollars, but it's still showing intent to bring in revenue while also offering an amazing benefit to the community. So that's another way to demonstrate sustainability.
And some of these things are why you will hear, if you're new nonprofits or starting nonprofits, and we kind of go back to your business as well, it is going to be difficult to get grants when you just opened your doors or you're thinking about opening your doors. So it's just like funding a new business. How do you demonstrate that you are going to be successful and that you're going to be able to manage the money and that your organization is going to be able to continue? And so I always say start small, right? Start with, like Dawn said, some of those small 500s, get some local donors, get some small things so that you can build success and demonstrate that you have the capacity to take on some of the bigger things. Project summary, I talked a little bit about this already because I always talk ahead, but that is really where you're going to talk about what is your organization's purpose, requesting money, what do you hope to achieve, and how will you spend this grant. We will talk a little bit further about you don't want to write 47 pages, but you want to provide enough information. You'll get a copy of our grant application later when we review a grant, but the one question is, please provide a detailed summary of your project. One sentence is not a detailed summary. One sentence does not tell me, and you can say I want to be brief, but that's not answering who, what, when, why, and where. So the summary is your opportunity to really lay that out. Who's your audience? Who do you serve? How does your project affect directly? Who does it affect indirectly? And why is your community as a whole part of your audience? So that's really thinking about who is it you serve. Who could be your potential people that you serve, and what's your role within the community? And some of that isn't just, I'm going to serve students, grades K through 4. It's going to be, tell me how many students, tell me how many in Lapeer County, tell me some demographics about those students, tell me if they're socially or if they're economically disadvantaged. Tell me if they have other barriers that you're trying to accomplish. So, give as much relevant data and statistics as you can find. And You know, the internet is open, so make sure you use valuable statistics, whether it's Alice reports, census reports. Find some good places to get that information, not Facebook.
Dang it.
I know.
So relevance, see the little dude snoring? So that harkens back again to, you know, don't overwrite, don't overtalk. But what's your big picture? What are you really trying to accomplish? Look at the statistics that are out there, know your competition, know who's impacted and know how they're impacted. And this, you know, I know we've said it, but make sure that you're well aligned with whom you're applying for, because the biggest thing that I hear is, wow, this is hard, this is a lot of time, this is a full-time job, and it's more than a full-time job. So if you do that research in the beginning to knock out who not to apply to, it's going to save you so much time. I can't tell you how each grant is so much work. So to go through all that work and you're just going down a road that is not relevant. So just do that due diligence on the front side. So I think that was the biggest thing that I wanted to accomplish. I'm reading my chicken scrawl because I will tend to go rogue, as you know, as you've heard. And knowing that, and knowing your grantor's strategic priorities. But I think that's the biggest thing. And when I first got in this role, because, I was the one giving the money away, which is easier, I think, than what you guys are doing and what I'm doing now, is I was like, oh, how hard can it be? So hard. So if you plan one day to do a grant, plan on 4. And if it's a federal, tack on another week. But make sure that you're doing it for something you really think you've got a good shot at getting. And for those of you who are starting out or you're in a niche category, consider, can I do what I love and maybe make it relevant in a different way? So I'm going to give you an example of my own animal sanctuary. I spent a lot of years rescuing animals and thought, well, we'll just, we'll have an animal sanctuary. That's a lot of bleach, by the way. But what we ended up doing is we found a niche. First, we started with critical care. Nobody wants to handle the critical care because it's a lot of work. Then we branched into critical care peacocks. Who does that, right? In Vegas, of all places. So we ended up doing critical care peacocks and chickens, and then we went into critical care goats. Aw, right? Aw factor, a lot of work because the goats are in the house with you in a diaper, but anyway. So I'm saying, can you take what you love to do and say, how can I make this just a little more relevant by maybe a little bit deeper dive? So think about what you're doing, especially for those, I've heard several people today say, I'm just new in this area, or I'm just starting out, or I've done this somewhere else. And so I would task you with saying, if you're dealing with competition, what do you do that's just that little bit extra? It's going to take you over that hump when the funder sees it and goes, oh, this is so cool, I have to fund this. Do I have more? I think I have more slides. I just got carried away, didn't I? How does your organization meet its goals? So be precise and relate it back to the problem to be solved. So you're going to solve X by doing X. And you want to say, what do you do? How do you do it? Where do you do it? Why is it effective? And most importantly, what's different about you? What's different about you than the 4 other people that are doing similar work? And avoid duplication in the same service area. And this is going to be the first time you hear it from me today, but not the last. A lot of times you can partner. And you can expand your efforts by partnering. Again, I'm going to cite Nancy. We both are working in the capacity building for small nonprofit space in different ways. So Nancy and I working together, we will do more, we will accomplish more if we work together. When I first got here, I'm from here, and I lived in Vegas for 30 years because that's where my career took me. Came back and met Nancy. But I really had to get to know the community, and what I kept hearing is, it's dog eat dog. It's all about competition. I can't get the grants because and the first thing out of somebody's mouth was, Nancy Boxey is your competition. And I'm like, well. So we went to lunch, we're like, we love each other. It was not what's to compete with. So we're better together, right? So that's something I look to all of you as well. We might do similar things, and there might be more than one animal agency, but the chances are you're doing different things. Or you're serving women in crisis. Doesn't mean that there's no reason not to partner with other agencies that might be doing something a little bit differently. So look to partnerships, because in that funding report, I promise you, they're going to say, who are you partnering with? And they're going to want you to mean it. And guess what else it does? It gives you so much power, because I gave the money away. Guess who I call when I'm like, oh, egad, what does this mean? I call Nancy. So there's so much power in working with one another and not considering one another competition. I can't say it enough. The money's hard, but it's out there, and we're all doing something different. So it is possible to access the funds that you need for your organization.
And I can't support that enough. And it's not just a Dawn Nancy Love Fest.
But it is.
No, I'm kidding. A little bit. But seriously, because just like everybody else, our dollars are limited. And even if you're a corporate, nationwide or global donor, there's still an end to the money. And we are all looking for the most impact for the dollars. And our money comes from donors, right? We're not conjuring it up. It comes from charitable people that want to say, I really want to impact our community. And the bigger the impact, the better. So that, I know we've partnered with GLT. We've partnered with a lot of you in here. So that if you're working together and you say, hey, how about if we loop these people in, you can do a bigger project. You can affect more people. You're all going to be stronger because of the end of it. So don't be afraid to say, can someone else come in my world and we can work on this together? Because it is hard. I will say, a couple years ago, we had a round of applications, and no joke, we have almost 10, if not more, that I don't know of, equine therapy nonprofits in Lapeer County. They all need a barn. They're all doing good things. They all need saddles. They're all helping individuals with disabilities, and they're all coming to us for money. We can't fund everybody, so how do we fund it? And so if we have 10 equine therapy programs coming to us and they all need saddles, you're either not going to get it or you're going to figure out how do we work together or another model of it. Because it's very hard for a committee when our committees are making these decisions that if we're going to do it, there has to be something unique about that proposal. Otherwise, we're opening the door that we have to do it for all. And we are not just a saddle buying organization. I picked that one because there's none of, I don't think, is there any equine therapies in here? But I mean, that's not a criticism, it's just there's a lot. So think about that. All right, I'll move it to the duck.
The duck. Okay, so we've talked about the partnerships. So again, can't say it enough. Partnerships are super important. And if you are going to do something that you believe is completely new, you're going to need to talk about why. How are you different for this demographic? Is anyone tackling your problem? And if so, what are you doing a little bit differently? And why? And here's one that comes up. If others have failed, why are you going to succeed? What is different about you? What sets you apart? And make sure that is high enough in the application that they see that. They're like, okay, that's why. Because if they start reading a grant and they're like, well, I've heard that before. You don't want anybody going into a grant with that. You want them to go, I've heard that. Oh, this is a new take on this. This is a new concept. So if you know that you're coming into a space that others have occupied and failed, what's different about you? And we know you're fabulous already. So it's got to be more than because it's me and I'm fabulous, so there's got to be something that sets you apart. And we've already discussed, is it a slightly different problem, or can you approach it from a different issue, a different lens that you're coming into the challenge with?
And believe it or not, we as funders like to say yes.
We do.
We do. I prefer yes. The worst part is making the no calls, because that hurts. You know, we know the work that you do is all very valuable, and it's just limited resources. So we want to help you get yeses. All right, we're going to start getting into everybody's favorite part of the day, where we start talking about budgets and those types of things. But when you start looking, you're going to want to define your assets. We've talked a lot about some of maybe the human assets of your organization, whether it's your staff, whether it's your volunteers, whether it's your board of trustees or directors, whether it's your school board, whether it's whomever it is, you have human assets in your organization. And understand what they are and be able to articulate them. You're going to have physical assets. Do you own a building? Do you own a barn? Do you have other, physical assets, equipment? Do you have financial assets? Make sure, again, your financial statement is in order, that you understand what your financial assets are, and then those intangibles, right? The intangibles are those maybe public will, I would call, as an intangible asset. Organizational history. An asset to the community foundation is we've been here for 28 years, and we have a track record of grant making and financial stability, above other things. So that's maybe what you would call an intangible asset. But you are going to need a budget. And you're going to have two budgets that you submit. One is your organization budget. So we want to know, do you have a budget for your organization? And believe it or not all organizations have them. Or they're kind of put together and they're kind of sketched and you think you have it, but you make sure you have an organization budget. And if you don't have an organization budget, call me, because there's some stuff you should probably be doing before you apply for grants. Then you're going to have a project budget, and that's what it is exactly that you're going to fund. So they're two different things, and most grant applications will see it in some type of a spreadsheet or number part, and sometimes it's called a narrative part. So if you know that your attendance, that your budget is, you're going to have program income of 500 campers and they're going to pay $100 a piece, that you're going to have, and I don't do math, $5,000, $50,000? $50,000.
I was sitting there doing math too.
She's a banker. $50,000 in program income. So you have it on your spreadsheet, but you're going to talk a little bit about, supporting that, of how you came up with that number. So your budget also shows us about ongoing funding. Are you self-sustaining? Is it cost-effective, what you're trying to do? And then that helps demonstrate the impact in the community for your budget. So if you're telling me that you need $1 million of equipment, and it seems totally wonky to the rest of what your organization is, does it even make sense that you're going to buy $1 million piece of an equipment, but the impact is going to be really small? That might say that, it's been a little unbalanced. Typical parts of a budget: personnel, fringe benefits, the materials that are part of the project, equipment, travel, contracted work, match if required. That's really important to understand, especially with federal and state dollars. They're looking for a local match or other type of match, and each funding application can look different what that match is. And sometimes one grant can serve as match for another, and we call that, layer caking of funding. So make sure you're very aware of what that match could be. And if that match has to be dollars, sometimes it can be in kind. I've written grant applications where the match is my time. It's the administrative time that the organization is giving can be your in-kind match. So make sure you understand what that is. Indirect costs are things that might be things related to your organization, a percentage. I know the federal government has, charts, those of you that write them more than I do, of percentage of overhead and things that can be factored in as part of your indirect cost to your budget. Sometimes it's easy to overlook these. I was just doing my grant application, and I overlooked the indirect match that we provide of, running the program that we were applying for. So kind of a rookie mistake, but I'm like, oh no, we're spending some time, because sometimes I don't value my own time. I'm like, well, I'm just going to run it, but it's an actual costs that we give to running that program. A budget narrative, that's usually for larger grants. It's essential that your budget detail with your supportive narrative exactly matches the costs and how you arrive at it. I can't tell you the number of times that Jennifer and I have reviewed grants and they say, we're asking for X, and we look at their budget and it's not X, it's Y. Or they've done their math wrong, or they've added or subtracted wrong. And we're like, we've had to call, like, which one are you asking for? You said you want $5,000, but it says you need 7. Oh, I made a mistake. At a small community foundation, we might allow you to fix it, or we catch it. Probably Wells Fargo, just it gave another reason for them not to fund. Oh, jeez. Dog's not there anymore. Make sure you can kind of see for equipment. Let it know. We're buying a composter. It's $2,500. I've gotten 3 quotes. The reason I picked Compost U Model 123 is because it has the best review. Let us know why you picked what you picked. We also let you know, sometimes you're buying something unique. Nobody else makes it. You can't get it anywhere else, or it's the best practice in your industry for whatever it is you're doing. We have a homeless shelter, and this is the software that every homeless shelter in America uses because of A, B, and C. Let us know that, because we have no idea. If it's a contract, tell us again. We picked elevated planting station construction for $250, and we got 3 quotes, and this was the average. You may not always pick the lowest bid. Let us know why you didn't pick the lowest bid. We don't require low bid, but we want to make sure if you haven't picked it, there's a good reason, not just because it's your neighbor. This is not meant to scare you, but this is what the U.S. Department of Ed might look like. Probably Mr. Hilton's seen this plenty of times. And you can see how more robust some of the budget information is that they require. And you can go online and look up these things so that you're not scared the first time you look at it.
No, it's still scary.
It's still scary.
Yeah.
I still ask, what are they, what is this exactly? And I'm, you're reading through the forms. This is more likely to be what you're going to submit to an organization such as ours. And our application, you can either fill it out in the application or you can attach a budget. Chances are if you attach it, it's always going to look better and it's going to be more robust. The one on the left is to show one that probably doesn't give you enough information, and the one on the right gives you a little bit more supporting detail of how you arrived at it. On the left it says we're just going to buy music stands, they're $350. But on the right you'll see that, on some of the things they'll tell you how many people you have to contract with, what the price is. So again, it matches and lets us know how you arrived at those numbers. It also lets us know that you've paid attention, you haven't forgotten something. Because there's been times we've gotten budgets and I'm thinking, well, gosh, I'm looking at this, but it doesn't say anything about installation. Like, how's that going to happen? Or delivery. Oh, we forgot about delivery fee or whatever else it is. So please, please, please make sure you have a comprehensive budget. It doesn't have to be an Excel 30-page. Your project might be very simple. We need to buy this one piece of equipment or we're doing one thing, but do not overlook the budget. I find that that's probably the thing that trips people up the most, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
And our youth so we have an adult board that reviews grants and we have a youth board, our YAC, and they are brutal. The youth board is worse than the adult board. I'm making sure your budget lines up, which is kind of fun.
That is fun.
It is fun.
Okay, so I'm snagging it back from
Yep.
Nancy here. So additional tips on writing a successful proposal. This sounds really silly, but a lot of times we use similar language from one grant to another, avoid copying from one proposal to another. I can't tell you how many times back when I was doing this for a living, I got Dear Bank of America Foundation So so what was funny is we ended up partnering because it was so funny, because it happened so much. But some people don't think it's funny. So just whoopsie. So just be careful when you're submitting a whole bunch of these and people don't have a sense of humor like me and Bank of America Foundation.
And it's, I'll interrupt, because it's confusing.
Okay.
So
It is
as you are aware, there's 2 community foundations that serve a portion of this
Yeah.
county. So there's the Lapeer County Community Foundation, and there's the 4 County Community Foundation.
Yes.
And I love Kathy Dickens, and we work well together, and we play in the same sandbox, and we do a lot of similar things. But we have our own funders and our own funding cycle. And, make sure you know what organization you're applying to. Because 1, our reviewers want to know that you know who you're applying to and respect it. But 2, I want to know, did you really mean to send it to me? Maybe I need to send it over to their office, and it was just a whoopsie.
And then my whoopsie, I'm gonna confess my whoopsie, okay? For some reason, I always call the 4 County Community Foundation the 4 Corner Community Foundation, because it's covering the corners of 4 counties. So I have to quadruple read anything I send to our friend over at the 4 County Community Foundation. So it's super easy to make a mistake. So that's why, one of the things that you're going to see in here is have somebody else put a set of eyes on it, because it's very, very easy to make a mistake. And cite your sources for the data. Make sure it's credible. Little secret I will give you, inside those RFPs that you get, and Nancy says download it, look at it. The one I'm working on, I'm going to go home tonight and work on a grant. Buried in the RFP was for information on data for click here. So I was like, sweet. So I was able to click on it, and then I was able to drill down into my county, and I was able to find information that they wanted inside their grant proposal. They gave me what I needed to do my job. I just had to read the RFP, click, and take the time to click the link. So what I task you with is, when you see an RFP, to Nancy's point, read it. Click on those hyperlinks, because half the time they want to give you the money. Like Nancy said, they want you to succeed. So they're even inserting little tips for you to help you succeed. Or they'll say something in there like, do you work with census.gov? Now I do. So if they say anything in that RFP, pay attention. Make sure you link your budget to your project goals. Don't make up numbers, because it will bite you in the buttocks. If you do make up numbers, or if you're or make sure you err on the side of something you know that you're really going to need. So if you know that you are, and I hate to keep using animals, it's just my experience, you're going to have a lot of veterinary care, you're going to have a lot of food. Put more of the budget over there, because then you don't have to go back to your funder and say, my bad, I didn't need that special filtration, whatever. Or if you break it out too far, you put too much in the wrong category, then you have to go back to the funder and ask for an exception. So for those of you who are new at this, you don't want to do that if you don't have to, because it makes it look like you didn't do that due diligence on the front end. So if you're putting in a project budget, be pretty sure you know where you need that money to go. And then you can always go back, and so for me, I had a funder. They said, we don't like what you asked for. You asked for too much of that, too much cat chow. How about if you put some of that over here? But it also got that door open and got me working with them and talking about how much cat chow I needed. And it really wasn't for that. It was for United Way. But it's the same thing, whatever your business is. Make sure that you're doing that due diligence. And don't be reluctant to contact the funding office. I will tell you, if I'm on the phone with you and a funder calls, I hang up. I tell you I love you, goodbye. And I talk to that funder. And don't give up. Don't give up. Because, for every, Nancy was saying how many hundreds of requests come through her office every year. That also means that she's got a limited staff that's trying to answer all your calls. But we, all the funders, love to help. We love to talk to you. This is our candy. This is like popcorn with extra butter, to get to talk to everybody. So that was the most fun I ever did when I was giving the money away for a living. was talking and helping and answering that phone and talk. So don't give up. If you have to call a few times, don't. Oh, they don't care about me. Yeah, they do. Just call back. And if they don't, heck with them. But most funders really want to talk to you and really they want to give their money away. A lot of funders can't leave it on the table. It doesn't roll over to the next budget year. They want you to have it.
And to interject in that, I can't stress enough to call.
Yeah.
Especially for our, I talk local office or whatnot.
Yeah.
It serves a lot of purposes. Call before you even apply to talk about your project. We actually even have that on our website. We recommend calling ahead to talk about your project. We can help direct you. We can help talk about your, does it make sense? If you're thinking of a project that's totally outside of our wheelhouse and doesn't make sense, I'm going to tell you that and save you a lot of time and me a lot of time. You might start talking about your project, and just like Dawn said, I'll be like, you know what, have you thought about it this way? Because if you did this over here, this makes more sense. Can you rearrange your budget that this is where our funders want to be or where we want to spend our money? So please have those conversations and then do active listening to what we say. We all have heard about the Lapeer County LEAF program, which is our child savings account program. And I can't tell you the number of funders I've talked to or grants I've written where I go in thinking, I want to get endowment dollars because I'm just thinking long term for this. And the funder says, you know what, we would love the educational component of it. I'm like, cool. Well, we've wanted to do bank bound, so that gets kids to banks. And they're like, yeah, we're all about that. Okay, now I have an in to a funder that we align with what it is. And part of that bank bound is at the very beginning, have projects up front. Have a bucket list of things that if you had the world that you could get money for, have them pre-developed and pre-thought out so that you're not struggling at that last minute grant application. So that when that funder says, I could do this, I'm like, yep, got it. We've already talked about someday wanting to do this. The other piece of talking to your funders, which Dawn said, is things do come up. Keep us in the loop. If your budget goes wonky, if your project goes wonky, if the timeline, let's face it, construction takes a long time, materials are hard to get, don't hide it, don't try and forget about it. Call us, let's work through it, keep us updated on what it is so we can either redirect or give you those extensions. But the last thing you can do for any funder is just hide and pretend it goes away.
Dang it. No, I'm kidding. I will tell you, in all of my 26 years, I only had one grant that I told the funder that they could not have an exception when because they had falsified documents. And if they had called and said, look, this really big mistake happened, but they falsified documents, and I could not support that behavior. So if you're like, oh dear, something went wrong, I made a mistake, pick up the phone. And that was Wells Fargo, which is a larger funder. But that's our reputation as well, if there's falsified documents out there. So if it is something that you're like, wow, I have to pivot, there's something going wrong, call that funder and talk to them. And this is my favorite. Speak human. I will tell you, there's one grant that came in. I was in tears. They used so many big words. I got out a thesaurus just for fun. It took me 2 hours to translate what they wanted because they really thought they had to sound smart. We're just like you. I don't know all those words. So it's like, what the heck? So after I got done trying to figure out what they wanted, it was a really simple thing they wanted. It was a really straightforward ask. And I called them. I said, if you can resubmit this in the English language spoken today, we'll talk. But don't worry about trying to sound like a brainiac, because most of us do this work because we love it and our hearts are in it. That's what they're trying to feel you. They're not trying to see that you can use 6-syllable words. And be nice. Oh my God, my husband's always like, because I'm always like, logo wear. So when you're in public, believe me, if I'm having dinner and somebody's being rude or mean or cursing a waitress, sorry, this is a small community, guys. We all either live near each other or know each other. Or like with Bill, I was talking to, I know Bill. No, I don't know Bill, I'm kidding. But I was giving a presentation and everybody knew my starter husband. So my starter husband is from Lapeer. And so this whole big thing happened and I got ripped on for a half an hour because of somebody I was married to 40 years ago. Because I mean, this was way before I had my AARP card, people. I was in my early 20s. So you've got to be careful, right? Because you know that by now he knows I called him my starter husband. Fortunately, we can laugh about it. And we have laughed about it with his current wife who says, you can be the starter, I'm the laster. But the point is everybody knows everybody here. So be nice. Impressions really matter. If you're having a bad day, you might want to stay in for lunch. And minimalist writing tips. Make sure that you check your punctuation. Choose your acronyms carefully because I know I've seen so many acronyms in this community. Like, what in the heck does all this stuff mean? So choose your acronyms carefully. Actually, I'd prefer you don't use them. Or if you put acronym and then put in parentheses who you're referring to. And characters count, less is more. That's really, really huge. And then I'm going to go right into the proofing tips. I'm going to give you, Sam from Lapeer Development Corporation gave me this brilliant insight and minimalist proofreading because I had read a grant like 10,000 times and I was over talking. I knew I was doing all these things wrong. And I was just like, blah, on the paper. And he said, have you ever used ChatGPT? So what I'm saying is don't let it write it for you because it also is not intuitive. So it'll say really weird stuff. So you can't lean on it or expect it to do the writing for you. But so for example, this morning, I wrote my narrative. I ran it through ChatGPT and it just corrected my basic grammar because you want to still sound like you. And you can say, I want to sound like me, check my grammar. Check my spelling. And so it'll just clean it up a little bit for you. But then read it again and make sure it doesn't take liberties. But ChatGPT is a great way if you're in Grant HE double toothpicks, it'll speed it up a little bit. And then read it out loud, read it again. But the unnecessary repetition, I'm famous for that. I am so redundant because I'll think something's important. I want everyone to know it 3,000 times. So avoid the repetition, avoid filler words. That's another thing that happens with people when I see people that haven't written a lot of grants. A sentence that could be 5 words is 15 words.
I'm guilty.
And that I am too. I am, especially if I'm nervous. I'm like, extra. So that's where, the ChatGPT helps a little bit because it'll like, take it down to 5 words. And sometimes like, I want 7, dang it, doot, doot, you add them back in. But at least it helps you. And then ask someone to read it because even though you have ChatGPT isn't going to be able to correct 4 corners community foundation, right? So you want to make sure that a human being actually lays eyes on it if you've got the luxury of having another human being to do that. If you don't, I recommend a friend, a husband, a neighbor, Nancy. So, because it's so easy to make a mistake. And if you're going for a big ask, read it an extra 3 or 10 times. So,
very good.
Back to you.
We've been through most of these, but some lessons learned. Grants are great, but make sure you keep your positive attitude. You may be successful. If you're not successful, don't get down on yourself. We've all had, learned from mistakes that I spent too little time and pushed the deadline and didn't get funded. The more you do it, the more successful you'll be. Grants do take a lot of time, so plan accordingly. Please don't short yourself. Because you will either not be successful because you haven't filled all the requirements, you just don't have the information on hand. have your DUNS number, your EIN, your usernames, your passwords. Keep it all up to date. Everything's online now, so if you're creating those accounts to apply online, remember to write it down somewhere or keep it in whatever lockbox you're keeping your passwords in so that you can get back in. We already talked about governing documents. Your CFO in your organization, it might be you, and you do all these jobs, but make sure that you're on top of your financial information. No grant is too big or too hard. Don't be frightened away. There's instructions. They're just boxes to fill, one at a time. Work through it. Have partners. I will call my funding partners that I have an application. I've never heard of what they're asking for before. If I was applying for transportation, Kelly's my best friend. And I don't think she finds that I'm a competitor. She'll be like, what are you applying for? This is what I used in the past. Find someone that can help you with it. Don't forget your final report. It's at the end here, but I can't emphasize this enough. You got your money, you did your project, life is good, the kids are swimming in the pool, they're learning in the classroom, the puppies have food, the homeless have a nice warm place to be overnight, and remember your funder. They want to know this information. It's not optional. In our organization, if you are not submitting final reports, you are not getting funded again. You're just not. And I've had to chase people down. I recognize you get busy. You get a year to turn it in. My recommendation, if it's a quick project, do it the sooner rather than later. I know staff can turn over, and that's another piece. If you have a staff where, you know, Sally's your grant writer and she goes off and has another position, does she have any open grants? Who's following up on that information? Because turnover does happen. But make sure you get those grant reports in. It tells us that we can tell a story. So the next time a donor walks in my door and has $50,000 and says, how can I help my community? Or what's the impact of the money of my $100 for Giving Tuesday? I can say, well, you know, we funded this health project. And this is what happened. And they're like, that is the best $100. I want to give you another $100. But if I don't have those final grant reports or your funder doesn't, you're not going to be considered and they're not going to be able to, you know, we help each other. So don't forget those. And if we can do it, you can. We've all learned. I didn't go to grant writing school.
Well, I did, but it was a long time ago.
Okay, so you did. So she's much more higher up on the food chain than me.
So the other thing I'd add is a lot of smaller folks that you get grants from don't ask for a final report. And I'm going to tell you, so what? You want to give them one. You want to keep that relationship going. You want to send them a couple photos. You want to tell your story. Because what will happen is if they, especially donor advised, they're making a decision to fund you, they could go boop and go over here tomorrow. So if you don't take the time to tell them why giving you the money was so fabulous and what you did with it, they could pivot on you. So you also want to make sure that even if they don't ask for it, you give them some type of a final report.
Final report and recognition. We all like to be recognized. So, you know, we tell people, if you got a grant from us, you're on social media, say, hey, thank you, Lapeer County Community Foundation, and we're tagged and a picture of what you did. It's good for your organization, it's good for our organization, it's good for the community to see it, and it helps us all out, and it doesn't matter whether it's your local one, because I've gotten national grants from national funders, and guess what, they're on social media, and when I tag them, they might have whole departments that are like, woohoo, and they're sharing it, and now we've got national exposure. So make sure you're spreading the wealth and the appreciation for it. All right, we're already at 3:25.
No, so really
What we want to do is get to some small table group and your questions. I just have in your packet some information about us. So if you want to know about our funding, you have that. We gave you some resources. This is not exhaustive. I checked links because this was older resource pages and they were still working. There's lots of information online, but the kind of granddaddy of them all for federal dollars is grants.gov, is how you search for those federal dollars. There's all sorts of other organizations that you can look under. You know, if you're arts and cultural, there's the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs. The internet, again, we've never had more information than we do right now available. I will caution you against paying for grant writing. You know, it's a business, so you can go online and you can pay them to write grants or do things for you. I don't have recommendations or none, but most of this should be free. So if you're paying for someone to find you grant opportunities, make sure they're tried and true and had success and not just taking your money, because probably your good old-fashioned research can get you most of it. So those are just some suggestions. Also look local, and it was funny because I put on United Way and Dawn's like, whoa, I don't have any money right now. But look locally and be creative because, you know, like she mentioned, most businesses and major corporations have a charitable arm. Some of them are located in your community. There are organizations that do grant making, whether it's the Optimist Club, whether it's the Leader Fund at Lapeer Schools, whether it's the foundation. There's other opportunities, McLaren Foundation. So, you know, don't do some exhaustive research. That's the end of the slides.
That was good. And what I will say is, you know, we're kind of undergoing a facelift at United Way, and one of the things that we realized, because and this is something I brought from my Wells Fargo years, is if you give money to the community and the needle 20 years later has not moved or it's going in the wrong direction, what can we do to make sure that the community has a chance to succeed? And so one of the areas that I used to do was consult with nonprofits, because if you succeed, the community succeeds, and that's the big thing. So what we're looking at United Way is starting community-facing activities to help get you in front of potential funders, or to help. I met with the nonprofit who shall remain nameless, and they were going under, they were struggling. And we had 1 half-an-hour conversation and because they were too close to it, it's not that I'm brilliant, it's just I've got to step back. I was able to help them alleviate 60% of their operating expenses just through a conversation. So that's what we're looking to do at United Way, is to not only give away money, but also help the nonprofits in our community, and Nancy's doing the same thing. If we help you build your bench, strengthen your capacity, what we want to look at is down the road, that needle moving, where our community doesn't have the same level of challenges, the same level of poverty, the same level of people not able to find a bed to sleep in at night. So that's the biggest thing, is we're moving that needle a little bit, and we look forward to partnering with you in the coming years.
So what we want to do now, it's 3:30, so I want to spend the next 15, 20 minutes, you at your tables. You will have noticed in your packet, you have a grant application. This is an actual grant application that we received at the Community Foundation this year. I would like you as a group at your table to look at that application and put together your thoughts based on your experiences and what we've talked about today on if that application meets the requirements and how it could be improved. So just by nature of it, there's some challenges in this application. So take a look at it, because when we talk about real life, this is real life. This is something we received, and our committees take a look at. So spend 15, 20 minutes, then we'll get your thoughts on where you feel about it, and then we can also ask for any questions or things from the presentation. Sound good?
Yep.
Or if you have any questions about the application. We won't tell you who it is or who applied.
I wish I had Thesaurus Girls application still, but I don't.
I don't. All right. I want to make sure we have time for any questions. So, what do you think about the grant application?
I work here for Steve.
How many of you would fund it as submitted?
No.
Anybody? No. So why don't you what are some of your big things that your group discussed? Does it have a clear,
that stand out that have not been brought up here?
I don't think they looked at it.
you don't think they actually looked at it?
Three
Let's
things.
go back.
Of the project.
I'll write it down because
And another estimate.
All right, do they have a good project summary?
Oh, you're right, yeah.
So what was interesting?
okay.
So remember how you were talking about like, make sure what you're doing and it's not what we already offer in the community, right?
Right.
So your first thing is talking about, like, is there anything else in the community that's like that? And they said no, but there really is because the rec center has some of these things already. So do some of the parks. Correct.
So,
It's interesting that they were like, no.
yep. And so we think about that. So what they're trying to build is they said nothing like this exists because they're looking at maybe their own little community or their own area, but is there a rec center? Is there other facilities in neighboring communities? If I wanted to play pickleball, you know, I want to know how many pickleball courts are in Lapeer County. Does that application say that?
So those are the things that rose to
So
the surface.
you're
for me.
asking for something and I don't have the data. And that's where we ask you to give us that data.
Check the map.
If you're going to build an outdoor basketball court, where's the nearest one?
Deserve of Celtic.
So what else were some areas that you noticed?
What is the population to be served?
You need number of people, geographic area, et cetera. It said this will serve all age groups.
All
And
ages.
it'll be a benefit.
Surrounding it. That doesn't tell you nothing.
Doesn't tell you anything. Too vague. So what I want to know is if it's all the community and all the ages, get on census.gov and what is Lapeer County census data? Don't assume I know what Lapeer County census data is, and certainly don't expect my review committee to know. Is there, you know, are we 60% senior citizens? Are we, you know, how many, if they're under 4, are they playing pickleball? What else? Yeah.
For the one question here about like, how would you, like how to continue to support the project once the funding ends? And they said basically the courts would be maintained by the school and the booster club. I would think with that, there would be some kind of like, I don't know, documentation needed or some specific name, like who's actually committing to take care of the maintenance? Like if we're gonna give you $130,000, how do we know in 5 years it's not gonna be a mess?
Right.
So like just maybe some more, I guess, in a letter or a name or some kind of, you know, promise from somebody, an organization, to support that, you know, maintenance.
Exactly. So if it was me, I'd have the school board pass a resolution or a motion or someone saying that the school's going to take on this responsibility and have some kind of fiduciary, we're going to keep it maintained. Did anyone have a problem with the $130,000 ask?
Yes, and they asked everybody for it.
They asked everybody. So I called the applicant and I said, hey, it's a $130,000 ask. It says you're asking some other folks here. How much is our portion? And their response was, whatever you give us. Like, we're just asking everybody for all of it and then we'll see how it goes. True story. Now, this is a person that, you know, and I'm not saying this to be critical because it's a volunteer, right? They're learning how to write a grant application. So I use this just as an example from a funder end or from you and what you've learned today of ways to, as you're writing these things. So the answer to that I shared with them is, so you have this big budget and you have potential funders and the Boosters Club might give some and the school might give some. I want a budget that is your best guess, right? In your best scenario, it's $130,000, and how are we going to tackle this animal? And I think it's reasonable to ask a community foundation for 15, and I'll ask the other one for 15, and I'll ask this group for this, and then I'm going to ask the community, because if the community wants this, if there's such a great need, does anyone want to give any money for it? And if they've done fundraisers and nobody wants to give money for it, that tells me there's not a great need. It's not a great need. It's your idea and your vision. So that's how you start tackling those things. The other thing is, it talked about some additional funders, and guess what? Dawn and I talk all the time. Kathy and I talk all the time. We talk about our grant applications we get all the time, and we say, hey, did they apply to you? Did they apply to you? What is your board doing? What is your board doing? What are you thinking? Because we want to leverage our resources so that you guys get more money and your projects get done. And in this particular case, they said they asked, and guess what? They didn't. They never even made the ask to the other funders. That's a red flag. What else?
Thing I see, but I'm a county guy, so first thing I see is we got a bunch of numbers that match to nothing except for one item. 24,000, but everything else is like, there's no estimate, there's no support gene. Right. So they're asking for money, you better have estimates they want.
Yep.
Actually, three of them.
Right.
So you can play with it. Yeah, so far I've only seen 24,000.
That has any kind of actual money tied to it.
Yeah, the $11,000 book with it. It just buys basketball with anyone out there.
It's not even on, yeah, the 11,000, I don't know where that could, where it went, but it's.
No, that's only based on the small ladies or the labor.
Yeah. We don't like miscellaneous, you can have a 10% contingency in construction budgets or whatever that is, but miscellaneous gets us really nervous. What's miscellaneous?
They didn't say how good the measure is that with project success. They had
What could be a measure? If you were writing it, what could be a measure of success?
being how many people are using it per day.
We're going to have someone do a count, right? We're going to have a volunteer count how many people at different times and be able to measure how many people are using it. That's one. What would be another one?
I would probably suggest something about that, especially if you're a couple of tardy senior rural, maybe you say we're in special event, and this is part of it to bring people in and to see what we got.
Right.
And we can get an idea, like you said, how many people are truly interested. It gives you a better idea. All this is the having that here, and you give us a free thing, say you come and try to bring in some hot dogs. So just to see what actually is happening at the very beginning.
Exactly. Yep. So that was a good example. Kelly, did you have something to add?
No, I was just gonna say, I would question just the one sort, the sole source, that just to have some more definition or background of what you did or due diligence to actually call and try to contact multiple different contractors to do that and show that, I contacted 25 different contractors and I waited this long and I only received one bid back.
That's perfect. That lets us know, right? Like you've done your due diligence. In our office, we call this I have a dream application, right? This is the I have a dream application, or we have a dream application. This is the wouldn't it be great in our community application. I am not saying it wouldn't be great. It could be the best thing that exactly what that district and that community needs, but it's not ready. It is not ready to get to the funder to ask for the ask. And in the right circumstances and in the right application, it could absolutely be the right application and the right ask. So that was probably the best example we've had recently to be able to share with all of you to kind of keep it. The questions that you put into that application, I always tell people that apply to us, if you were the funder and you are responsible for I always use this example, little old ladies that give us $10 as a donor, and it's all they have, and they want to do something good in their community, because that is our job, right? People give us money to do good things, and they trust us. So if I trusted you with $130,000, what questions would you want to ask if I was going to ask for that? So every application you write, put yourself in that mind. Because if it's a federal grant, it's my tax dollars. So make sure you're answering those questions from that level of responsibility. So questions for Dawn or for me. She has all that wealth of corporate experience and grant
And a lot of
making.
knowledge about breaking your leg in 5 places. So either set of questions you can ask me.
Anything. Jenna.
Yeah, you were saying, if anything changes after you apply, you would recommend that you call the grant organization and talk to them about what changed. So that's common that, I can imagine when there's instruction things involved, numbers change.
Yep.
You're saying you should call them. and say, our numbers change?
As the construction continues.
It would be important to call if it significantly impacted your project. Like if we funded your project and, you were building a new pool.
Yeah.
And we funded your new pool. And all of a sudden, you get halfway through construction and you're not going to be able to complete the project because rather than this a dollar amount, it's now triple the cost. And so now your pool's not going to open next year and you don't have the money. That's a call to us to say, hey, we know you granted us the money. Our project is way over budget. It's going to take us more time to do it. We're either going to change our project, so rather than doing the whole thing, we think we can get through this year. Can we use your money to do these 3 things to get us through? Or can we have another 2 years while we work it through?
Well, we shouldn't call you every time.
Oh, please no. Please no. Please no. I only care if it's going to affect your project. If it's only going to affect your project.
Nancy, can I call you after I get the unfortunate no notification that it hasn't been?
Absolutely.
That's what I'm finding difficult to understand where I came up short on an application, why it wasn't funded.
Please do.
Okay.
Please do. We want to share with
Do you
you.
give feedback typically to, to the no's so that they understand
Yep.
where they can improve and then
Yep.
reapply?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
like the federal ones and the state ones that I've been.
Those are harder.
Maybe they don't have the capacity to do that, but I'm just looking, it's not unreasonable for an applicant. to
It
look
is
for
not
something.
unreasonable. And even the ones that maybe you don't have the same phone level, usually there's an email. And you can even email, say, hey, is there an opportunity to receive some feedback on why we're unsuccessful? So yeah, absolutely.
I would like to say that,
A couple of years ago, I was building a new apartment. I was the American Legion here. And I was I guess the guy who was mostly in charge of it. We were on a grant application. And to the community foundation to help us do that project. And if it had been a project that benefited veterans directly, it would have been a different answer. But it's hard to justify building a parking lot with community foundation money. But to your credit, you guys really tried hard to help us with that project. But it was just not fit. And so I guess that kind of reinforces a lot of the stuff that we've been saying today. The project has to fit it with the resources that are available. And if it doesn't, you gotta go somewhere else.
Correct. And to Bill's point, what we try and do, I don't have all the answers. Dawn doesn't have all the answers, because if I had pots of money outside of our own, we'd all be in a different scenario. But we try and help guide you if there's other opportunities. If it's always good when I can say, hey, I can't help you, but my partner over at United Way, this is the type of thing that they do. When Dawn met me at that very first lunch, she really did say, are we relevant? Do we need a United Way? And my answer was absolutely, because they can fund things that we can't fund. I'm like, we are doing different things that are in the same network, and it's important that we're there, and so we share those resources. I'm not a harbinger of secrets. Other questions? Anything else? Applications?
It says real quick, Nancy. So when everything's said and done and you've submitted the application and the deadline comes and goes, what's kind of the average timeline before you get a response, like an answer to your request?
Depends on, like for our organization, we review our applications on odd months with our committee, and the recommendations are made to our board the following even month. So depending on when you apply, it could be up to 2 months, depending on when we receive it into our office. For other applications, oftentimes if in the RFP, it will tell you when awards are announced. And some of them are a long time, especially federal and state grants. It can be a while. So it just depends on the funding organization. But like on our website, it tells you the grant cycle, and it kind of has the guidelines so you can look and see, they're going to meet the second Monday of every month, and the board meetings are the second Wednesday of the other month. So that'll give you an idea.
Yeah, it can be months. I just submitted one, the letter of interest went in June. I was invited to apply August 16th, but who's counting? And I just was notified of their decision 2 days ago. So it can feel like a million years are going by, but they're trying to determine, you know, they're sifting through so many grants. So it can be a multi-month. It's hard to be patient and wait though.
And the state grants, they'll give you, we're going to notify you in October.
Yeah.
October comes and goes, November comes and goes, December comes and goes, and you're still waiting here. That's
Oh.
not unusual.
Yep.
Because of the volume of the grants they've got, the amount of money is being asked for, the hoops they've all got to jump through as they review all this.
And the political cycle of the budgets, state and federal budgets, if they change their funding and whatever. The one thing that Dawn just mentioned, also be aware, because you can get lost in the acronyms, but there are oftentimes letters of intent. So you might find a funding opportunity where it starts with is you have to submit a letter of an intent to apply, or you're invited. So that is basically, and I'm probably boiling it down too much, but it's basically me saying, hey, yeah, we're the Lapeer County Community Foundation, we have this project, this is what we're looking to do, we're going to apply for the cycle, and then out of that, then they invite you. They might dump you out in that first letter and say, no, you don't even get past stage 1.
Yeah.
So
And-
look
and
for
see that,
those.
speaking of acronyms, I said interest instead of intent. But then they invited me to apply. So that's it's a long process sometimes. And they have to decide, you got to put a lot in that very short letter so that they're like, okay, this is interesting enough, I want to hear more. So.
And you're all busy, your organizations are small, but that's part of the keep your projects, you know, have something in the hopper, right? In your times when you're not actively applying for anything or whatever, and you're doing your strategic planning, be prepared. So when those things pop up, you're ready to go. You're not scrambling at the last minute going, oh, well, I was kind of thinking, because been there, done that. It is 5 after. Any other last burning questions? Was it helpful? Did you all leave with something? Every one of these sessions is recorded, and it will be up on our YouTube channel probably by the end of next week. And you can find our other nonprofit workshops on our YouTube channel. And I forgot to pass it out. So I will have Jennifer take these around. Our next workshop, if you are interested, is going to be December 12th, same place, from 9 until noon, and it's about strategic planning. So Regina Pinney, who is the Executive Director of Nonprofit Network, if you came to any of them last year, she's phenomenal, and she is going to talk all about why you need a strategic plan, how you go about that process, understanding it, and if you need to hire a facilitator. So I think it's valuable for every organization to have some type of a strategic plan and not just to sit on a shelf. So it is a QR code. You can register now. The link is live, and same place. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
It's like,